Question for the final round is, number 5, how can Farm Bureau help members with increasing legal and regulatory obstacles so they can focus on farming and ranching? Competitors, congratulations on your advancement to the Final Four. The competitors for this round are Caitlin Butler, Newt Gilman, Heather Cade, and Will Godowns. We will begin this discussion with a 30-second opening statements from each competitor. Following the opening statements will be 30 minutes of open discussion, followed by 1 minute of quiet time for the competitors to prepare their 1-minute closing statement. Official time is kept by the timekeeper. Competitors, in voluntary order, make your 30-second opening statements. Please stand and direct your opening statements to the audience. The timer will indicate when your 30 seconds have elapsed by holding up a red card. You may begin.
We farm because we love what we do, not because we love dealing with regulations and legal lawsuits. How can Farm Bureau help lessen these burdens of our time and money? I believe this is something Farm Bureau has been preparing itself for many years. I think it's time that we focus on the small things and do them right. We all know how hard Farm Bureau works to protect us from legislation. I look forward to discussing this topic and finding ways that we can implement things in our county farm bureaus to make a change.
The U.S. Code of Federal Regulations is over 175,000 pages long, containing more than 1 million commandments from Washington, using restrictive language such as shall, cannot, and must. While it's obvious that not all of these regulations directly affect the industry of agriculture, it's obvious to see that our current system has gotten out of hand. I look forward to working with this group to generating solutions for how Farm Bureau can help alleviate this burden on agriculturists.
I mean, really, do farmers need something else to worry about? Think about it. Is there any other profession with more moving parts or that's acted on by other external forces than farming? The weather, the economy, public perception? We as farmers are fortunate to have had Farm Bureau for the last 80 years as an advocate to deter some of these legislative issues with their involvement in the legislative arena. And as long as these regulations exist, the need for Farm Bureau is of utmost importance. I look forward to our discussion today.
Let's start by stating the obvious. We all want safe food and a clean environment. Farmers are the best caretakers of the land and our food supply. Our carbon footprint is shrinking, and our food is the safest in the world. Despite this, the burden of regulations is placed squarely on the shoulders of our farmers. We have to find a way to relieve this pressure so that our producers can get back to feeding the world.
You have heard the opening statements. The competitors may now proceed with the discussion. Competitors, please direct your discussion to your fellow panel members.
Caitlin, you brought up a good point in your opening statement of the complexity of all our regulations and how do we weed through them and know what applies to us or how the court is going to read that statute and apply it to us. I mean, when you look at different cases across the country, you know, just a simple term of pollution or farm expansion or a farming operation or nuisance gets construed and misinterpreted in many different ways. And one thing I came across as we were looking through stuff last night that really simplified a lot of it to me was a blog that Texas A&M uses called their Agricultural Law blog. And I learned more in that 10 minutes of reading through that blog than I've learned in 10 years of studying for discussion weeks about how the law is read, how it affects the farmers, and what we can do to kind of work our way around it. And I'd be interested, Caitlin, and the rest of y'all hearing ways that we think we can simplify all the regulatory paperwork that we have to deal with.
Well, I think you bring up a good point in that there's just so much out there. There are so many regulations that no one person could ever possibly hope to understand and make sure that they're in compliance with all of the various regulations that exist. I think one way that we can make a difference here is to help support and advocate for the current administration's Regulatory Reform Commission, which is kind of designed to go through these regulations that exist and weed through some of our older regulations that are on the books and present those to Congress in groups where Congress can either say, yes, this is a regulation that is needed, we need to keep it on the books, it makes sense, or Congress can say, no, this regulation, it's outdated, it doesn't apply anymore to the way that we do business and that we have agriculture in the United States. So I think if we, as Farm Bureau members, can help support that commission, I think that's one way that we can kind of help ourselves get that sort of clarity and maybe streamline some of these regulations that farmers are forced with every day. Heather, what do you think about that?
I think that you bring up a good point, and I think that one thing we need to focus on is that Farm Bureau already does a really good job of keeping up with what's going on in the legislative arena, and that when there are big things that need to be passed through, they let us know. They send out blast emails, they offer us the voter voice page on the website, and as soon as we go and we input our information, they let us know. They have written letters already done for us, so that the farmer doesn't have to take time out of their day to sit down and contact their legislator and express their concerns. One thing that I think that is really important to talk about is that we need somebody that is ready to be on the line of defense for farmers. Farm Bureau already has a panel of legal counselors for the insurance side. And I want us to think maybe about the option of creating a panel of lawyers that are maybe just ready to take the 50 hours of pro bono hours that are recommended by the American Bar Association for each lawyer to have per year. And if these lawyers could donate some time to Farm Bureau to represent these farmers when legal issues do arrive, then I think that really could help farmers take some of the worry off and to know that they have somebody in their arsenal, if you will. Nick, do you have any comments on that?
You know, I think all of you bring up great points about how we can both help farmers wade through the 175,000 pages of regulations and giving them resources to deal with the legal concerns. Kayla, I wanted to bounce off of something that you said earlier about addressing outdated regulations. We actually have something going through the Senate, I believe, right now called the Regulatory Accountability Act of 2017. It was Rob Portman of Ohio that introduced it. And if that does pass, and hopefully it will, that will require automatic updates and reviews of all regulations. I mean, our government is so outdated that until this year, they were still doing paperwork talking about how they were preparing for Y2K in all of the government agencies. And if it's that far behind, then there's some serious work and cleanup that needs to be done. And I think we can be optimistic about this administration. Something that you brought up, Heather, about finding ways to inform farmers on all of the legislative updates and regulatory changes. I think a great resource we can use is Farm Bureau University, which we already use to train our county board members and all of our Farm Bureau members on advocacy. I think putting some kind of curriculum or resources online for the farmers who have access to the internet and are tech savvy, they can use that to learn quick and easy ways to comply with the regulations, and it can all be condensed down to the nitty-gritty instead of having all the shalls and therefores and all the legalese that's in there that you have to have a law degree to understand. Will, what do you think about that? I know you have a business, and what would help you deal with regulations in agriculture with your business?
Newt, I appreciate that, and that brings up a point that I really wanted to touch on, is that, you know, we do a lot through Farm Bureau now, and the Farm Bureau University is a good thing, but as I was looking through that Texas A&M site, I thought, man, you put Farm Bureau University or just the Georgia Farm Bureau website in conjunction with, say, the University of Georgia, and let them gather that information for us, and us just be a window or a link to it. You know, in my operation, we're kind of diversified between agriculture and non-agriculture entities, and, you know, at the end of the 70-hour work week, I don't have time to go spend 30 minutes searching through legal documents online to figure out which one applies to me and how in the hell do I read this thing. You know, so I think when you get right down to it, how it applies to the producer and my standpoint, that is something that we can actually take from this meeting today and go home and push for through steps and processes in Farm Bureau that we're all familiar with, to make that something that really happens out of this, to where producers all across the state know they've got one place that they can go click and everything's laid out in a clear and plain format for them to read through and say, you know, well, this poultry farmer in a different state fought this. I see this problem coming across the United States to us. What can we do ahead of time to combat it? Because I really think when we get to trying to lessen these legal and regulatory burdens, we've got to stop them at the beginning. We've got to figure out how to be in front of the ball instead of trying to stop the snowball deal, kind of, as a way to say it. But, and you know, ways to do that, you really look right now, Caitlin, you brought up this administration we're under right now. There's people on Capitol Hill in DC that are saying this is the golden age for Georgia agriculture. Never have we been in such a position to have a president that wants to lessen regulations, you know, Secretary of Agriculture from the state that understands what we're going through and how much regulation is slow our processes down and how much time and money it costs us. To American Farm Bureau president from our state, Mr. Duval, that, you know, is the best cheerleader we could have in our corner to talk with those two people and to make sure, you know, that happens, that regulations are lessened and stuff like that. And I really believe that, you know, Farm Bureau right now in this day has spent a lot of years getting to this point, and we're a well-oiled machine at this point. We just need to be engaged with and make sure from the grassroots level up that, you know, our issues are talked about and are prioritized so that we know, you know, what this well-oiled machine needs to be focusing on to make that happen. And there's a lot of ways we can go about doing that. But to me, the biggest thing is just staying engaged and letting people know what we're dealing with as producers on an everyday standpoint.
And to talk about being engaged, you know, we brought up some ideas about some digital resources for farmers and condensing all of that information. I think we also need to think about the farmers who are not tech savvy. And the ones who are not tech savvy, they still read the newspaper and they still read their mail. And Farm Bureau mails out a magazine every month. So why don't, one proposal we could make is that we could just add a little more material to that magazine and include state and national bills that are going through the houses of Congress and the changes that it could affect. And that way, the farmer doesn't just sit around thinking, man, I hope the government doesn't cause more problems for me. They'll know exactly what problems may be coming down the pipeline, and they can call their senators or representatives, or if they feel confident enough, even go for a visit. And they can say, hey, I know this bill is going through, and it's going to cause this problem for my farm, and this is how I would appreciate you to vote if it comes to the floor, instead of just wondering what might sneak up on them when they wake up the next day.
And I think building off of that, and also something that you said, Heather, about, you know, a lot of farmers don't necessarily think about taking the time out of their day to think about these regulations and to work towards these regulations. I think it's very important that we keep our farmers engaged on the local level. Will, you talked about it being a grassroots effort. I think too often we have producers who, like you said, they just kind of sit back and wait and see what's going to happen. And I think it's really important for Farm Bureau as an advocacy group to make sure that all of our producers and all of our Farm Bureau members are doing that that work to go out and know who your legislator is and to make sure that that person understands what sound practices look like in our industry. Because we are the ones who are producing food. We know what sound quality practices are. And so engaging local members to engage with their local legislation to make sure that our policies and practices are the ones that are getting put into these regulations so that the regulations match sound agricultural practices. Heather, did you have some other ideas about that?
I do. I wanted to touch on one thing that you mentioned about adding it to the magazine. I think that is a great idea because I think that some of our older generation really relies on that magazine monthly to get their Farm Bureau updates from. Farm Bureau already sends out an electronic copy of the legislative updates to emails for the legislative committee chair of each county, and they send a paper copy as well. But I like the idea of adding it to the magazine. Caitlin, off of what you were saying, having a personal relationship with your congressman and their aides, I think is huge in this day and age. We've had our congressman from our district to our home several times, and we've gotten to know his aides very well. And in a recent conversation that I was having with his aide, he said that right now with such a conservative president, or a more conservative president, he is getting 10 to 1 more liberal phone calls than he is conservatives. And so I think that right now a big thing for Farm Bureau is not to get complacent, because the squeaky wheel is going to get the grease. And so if we let them get the upper hand on us right now, I think that we'll lose some ground that we've gained back in this new day and age.
Heather, you bring up some very good points there, and I want to go back and touch on a couple we talked about earlier, but like the legal team, you know, I've talked to some producers and this is just one instance, but when you look at, say, EPA complaints or spray drift complaints, there's no thing there to protect the farmer. It's all for the neighbor that's complaining about the spray drift. And so how can Farm Bureau help? Well, I see us being able to, you hate to say put more policy or more regulation, but we need some kind of recourse, and I think this is, through legislation what Farm Bureau can have for the people making the complaints. They can make, I can make a complaint against Newt or Caitlin or Heather as many times a day, as many times a week as I want, and there's no recourse for any of those complaints I make not having any ground to stand on. And so I think that's, Farm Bureau, as far as being in touch with the grassroots, can take that and make that a priority as to how do we put some recourse on these people that are making complaints that are costing me as a producer hours out of my day, acres of cropland lost because I can't plant next to their property or something like that. And I think that's, an area where Farm Bureau has spent a lot of time making relationships with people on Capitol Hill, in the Capitol in Georgia, and different places where we could actually make a change there as to, if they have so many complaints in a 3-month growing season, well, let's put a cap on it where, a certain percentage of those complaints is not viable. Well, for the next 12 months, we're not listening to any complaints you have from us, or something like that, or you've cost this farmer, so much in legal fees, time lost out of the field, crop loss, that if your complaint doesn't follow through, you're footing the bill for that. And I think that's something we can actually see come to fruition through legislation and bills passed that Farm Bureau could really get behind and have the voice, be the squeaky wheel for that entity to say, these are real applications that are happening every day on our farms, and this is real money lost by our producers. We need to do something about it. And I'd like to hear those thoughts.
I think that you bring up an interesting point when we talk about money lost. I think that one thing we as a group haven't touched on yet is one other area where we could really educate is with the consumer. I think that a lot of consumers don't necessarily understand the cost of these regulations are going to trickle down to them. So when we have a lot of burdensome regulation that's not really helping keep a safe, wholesome food supply, then farmers are having to compensate for that, and the products that you purchase when you go to the grocery store are going to be more expensive. Those regulatory costs do not just negatively impact the producer. And Will, you brought up, if you have to foot the bill for a complaint that isn't legitimate, that's hitting you in your pocketbook, and that's going to make a real difference in the people who make those complaints. So I think helping consumers also understand that, some of these regulations on paper give you kind of a feel-good feeling. They sound like a good idea. But are you really willing to invest your dollars in these regulations? Is it really that important?
I think you're right, Caitlin. I think a lot of consumers don't understand the financial impact on themselves. And honestly, a lot of the people who want to make themselves feel like a good person for supporting regulations, they're not actually willing to foot the bill themselves for those kinds of changes. So I think putting it in a perspective that they can understand, like Jordan from UGA talked to us about yesterday, when you're marketing, which applies even to advocacy, you have to speak in terms about the kinds of topics that really matter to the consumers. For example, regulations against GMOs actually hurt the environment because GMOs have reduced our carbon footprint significantly. So I think focusing on that aspect of our industry is very helpful. And also, family farms are struggling financially to purchase the equipment and the land and the resources they need because they're also spending money and time with compliance. And if those are the two major things that consumers care about that are outside of this industry, then those are the two things that we really need to hit on, because that's the nerve centers that drive their belief, and that's what they think they're acting in favor of when they're really hurting those things. So I think those are the areas that we can focus on going forward.
I agree with you. One thing I think that we should touch on is you mentioned Capitol Hill. And I think that after the Ditch the Rule campaign that Farm Bureau headed up, that it has left us with an extraordinary reputation on the Hill. And people know when they hear Ditch the Rule or they don't hear anything about WOTUS, that Farm Bureau obviously just comes up as first thing. I think that it may be time for Farm Bureau to have a more heated discussion or a more in-depth discussion about formulation of some PACs and political action committees. And I think that with this, we could take a more direct approach And it may involve the investment of some money, but I think that with these packs, that we could more directly approach these obstacles that we have in front of us. What is your opinion on that?
You know, I'm glad you brought that up, Heather, because that's one thing I definitely wanted us to talk about today is that there are neighboring Farm Bureau states around us that have already got packs. In our policy, we support commodity commissions forming packs to make things happen. And in the day and age we're in now, you know, Farm Bureau has been operating this way for longer than any of us have been alive, as far as we don't support a candidate. But in today's world, to actually, you know, impact a change, get a direct line to make something happen, that's something, you know, a very viable point that I think we need to look at as to going forward. How is Farm Bureau going to stay relevant? How are we going to make sure we keep representing the farmers in the best way we can? And you know, there's a lot of different ways you can look at a pack, and some people get really scared of them and think, well, that's gonna send some people away, or that's, you know, but when you get right down to it, I think we have got the resources to do the research behind the candidates to make sure we are backing someone we believe in and that we know will stand for us as agriculturists when it comes time to making laws. As far as making something happen, you know, right now we do a lot, and we have done a lot. And with WOTUS and digital rule, we have a big impact, but we're still just a lobbying organization saying, hey, this is what our policy supports. We hope you call us when this comes up. We want to make a difference. Please talk to us, to having somebody that we've got a direct line to and say, hey, this is what we need you to do to help us today.
I think both of you are right, and you know, in this day and age, we definitely need to be more aggressive, and I think more direct, instead of just having just a more of a laid-back approach and just saying, this is what we support, we hope we find somebody that does. We've kind of focused, I guess, for more of a bird's eye view on the national and state level. I'd like to kind of bring this back in more to the local level. When Brittany Ivy was talking to us yesterday, she said that farmers shouldn't, and Farm Bureau members shouldn't be scared to actually try and be on the county commission or to be on any local boards that can actually have a direct influence on policy instead of running to the policymakers ourselves. And in the spirit of supporting candidates, I think at least in local elections, local Farm Bureau offices can support Farm Bureau members. If they know that one of them is running for local office, they can get behind that candidate and give them the support they need for name recognition so that they can have a direct influence on policy. And one issue where I think that can really be effective is with zoning laws. In Madison County, the county commissioners weren't too agricultural friendly, and one of their excuses for trying to halt the building of chicken houses was water usage. And they were basically claiming that agriculture was the most wasteful of water. And Farm Bureau, local extension, I believe the Cattlemen's Association, some other partners of Farm Bureau, all band together and built a presentation. And out of that entire presentation, the most effective point that they made was when they had comparisons of water usage with residential areas, golf courses, and other aspects that they were probably more used to. And while agriculture wasn't the least had the least consumption of water, they certainly weren't the most. Golf courses and residential areas were more wasteful of water than agriculture. And I think just laying things out very clearly like that, instead of being aggressive towards our opposition and belittling them, can have a bigger impact instead of adopting some of the harsh campaigning measures that we see other groups adopting these days.
Yeah, and that's a good way to look at it, is to be engaged on a local level. You know, everything starts in our communities. If I go to Washington and say, well, I want you to change this, he's going to ask me, well, what have you done at home to curb this thing, you know? And if we don't have anything to stand on, well, we're just another voice in the crowd kind of deal. But yeah, I like your idea about that. I think that's something that we can really take away from this meeting and go home and say, hey, either I need to take the time out of my day to serve on one of these boards, a zoning, planning board, county commissioners board, or something like that, or we need, like you said, we need to get behind people that we know we can trust. You know, in Pike County, it's small, it's rural. Most everybody's in touch with agriculture. There are some that aren't, but you know, it's one of those things that you don't think about. You know, you kind of get complacent. You think, well, it's going to be all right. Well, in our area, Fayette County, Henry County is steadily growing upon us. And if we don't start getting things done now, we're gonna be behind the ball and not able to stop it. And I think if you look at other, the way other states combated that, I think North Dakota and Missouri both voted for farming rights amendments to the Constitution. Now, all 50 states are a right to farm state. That helps us with urban sprawl and nuisance lawsuits. But when you get to farming rights amendments, that is actually making amendments to the Constitution that are going to prevent laws from being made that are going to place more regulation and legal problems on us as agriculturalists. And Caitlin, I'd like to hear how you think that could help you in your county.
Yeah, I think it's, I'm kind of in a unique position because on the Morgan County Farm Bureau Board of Directors, we actually have a county commissioner who sits on our board of directors. And I've seen firsthand that can, like you were saying, make a significant difference in how agriculture is viewed in the community when members of the local government are active, engaged Farm Bureau members. So I think, yeah, well, what you bring up about, trying to get these types of amendments added to the state constitution and understanding that that's going to start on a local level. Creating a group of people in your local community who can help you advocate for that. And that's where Farm Bureau's role is most obvious. We are naturally the people in the community who should lead that effort to getting those types of legislations passed. Heather, you have some thoughts too?
I think if we're talking about starting things on a local level, just one example of what we've done in our county is we've held a legislative breakfast. And we've invited all the county legislators to come in and just visit with us. And one time we even showed farmland at the breakfast. And I think that maybe it would be a good idea to take it a step further, to invite your legislators to your farm and involve your congressmen and their aides, and just bring them out to your farm, establish that relationship with them, and then also create a legislative event for your county. Just make it a big deal.
And Heather, that's something that hits home with us because we didn't have one this year, timing just didn't happen, but in the past, we've had farm tours where we invite all the school board members, superintendents, principals, ag students, as well as county commissioners, county managers, on up to the state level, get as many people out there as we can. We take them around 10 or 11 farms in the county, and it is really amazing to see how much of an eye-opening experience that is for someone that represents us. You would think, well, they're from our hometown, they represent us, they know what's going on. They have no clue as to what we do at Caldwell Farm and Land as far as producing beef that travels across the country and to other countries. And so I think that's a very good point, and a very good way to help for Farm Bureau to play a part in there with the connections we've got, the relationships we've made, is to get those people on the farms and see this is what's going on, this is how it affects our operation. When you do that, you create a relationship that's there forever. They're always, if they have a good experience, when a bill comes through the House, when the issue comes up on county commissioners meeting board, they're going to call, Heather Cave from their beef operation to see, how do you feel about this? What's the impact it's going to have on this? So I think that's somewhere we can really focus our efforts at Farm Bureau and make this happen.
And I think while we're discussing all the legal options and issues like we've done, it sounds like we're all in general agreement that enhancing the resources we already have to activate the grassroots and engaging with our senators and representatives is extremely important. Sometimes the solution to some of our problems is making sure the correct people in government are handling our problems. Right now, there's a Georgia Senate Bill 257 that's going to be taken up next year. And if it passes, then it'll actually make it so that any animal cruelty cases have to be first taken up with the Georgia Department of Agriculture and the state veterinarian before local law enforcement can file any charges. So that'll actually protect agriculturists from any of the propaganda from the Humane Society and PETA. And that doesn't really require a whole lot of major effort if all we can do is get behind that and push our state representatives to get that passed. So I think that's something we should also keep in mind, is making sure the proper agencies are handling our problems.
I think you bring up a good point here, and I think that even though that is in place, and even if it does go straight to the Georgia Department of Ag first, I think that there's that gap of time that farmers are still in danger if an issue does arise. So I want to go back just a little bit to the idea that I brought up at first about the panel of lawyers. Do you think that this is something that Farm Bureau could implement as one of their member services? that they could offer this to their farmer members and, have it on the back of the cart, just like all the other benefits that we have? Is this something that maybe we could implement as a benefit to members?
I definitely think, sorry, we'll go ahead.
Heather, I think that is a very good thing. It's something that every one of us would love to see happen, just for the simple fact of promoting agriculture in the state. And when we get right down to it, the rubber meets the road, we're doing a lot of restructuring in Farm Bureau right now. And it's kind of tough to say where we're going to be in the next couple of years, money-wise and saying things. I think your idea of being able to get them to donate pro bono time makes that more of a viable option. But when we get, we want to say that Farm Bureau is created to help farmers, and that's our sole purpose. And we do as much of that as we can. But at some point, somebody's got to pay the bill. And so I'm kind of skeptical. I would love it. I think it'd be the best thing in the world. I don't see how we can make it happen in the next couple of years, how we can fund something like that. I'm more than willing and open to ideas and different ways to look at this and make it happen. Because I agree with you, it'd be something that would be a great benefit.
I think one solution to the funding issue, Heather, that could really make this viable would be if we just sort of had these lawyers on like contracts. So maybe we don't hire them to work for Farm Bureau. We just identify a group of lawyers who have that ag law specialty and say, listen, we just kind of want you almost like on retainer. Like if we have an issue, we want to know that we can call you, create agreements with them where maybe we're only billed for their services if we actually need to utilize them, as opposed to trying to take on the burden of hiring this panel of lawyers to be part of maybe Farm Bureau staff. We just identify people, maybe one in each area of the state who would be willing to answer our questions and to advise farmers just on an as-needed basis. I think that's one way that we can kind of compromise between your idea of a legal panel and Will's concerns with how do we fund that.
Well, I think a way to kind of compromise that even further, take pieces of both of your ideas, is if it does not ever become financially viable for us to do either one of those things, we could at least identify the ag law experts out there and inform farmers of their rights so that they don't agree with a regulator's ruling, then they can call on these lawyers that we identify for them and publish on our website, and then they can go and reach out to those lawyers and deal with that themselves. So I think at least making them aware of what's available to them is equally important.
And, I think that goes back to, let's put a Farm Bureau blog, agricultural law blog out there with all the scenarios that could happen, and that's a good place to put those ag law firms and lawyers that Farm Bureau has created relationships with out there, so that when somebody files a complaint against me about my chicken manure leaching into a ground aquifer and contaminating water as pollutant, who do I turn to? Do I pick the first lawyer I get to, or do I go to a site that I'm a member of that has researched these lawyers and say, these are the guys aren't out there, they're out there to help you kind of deal. And I think that's a good solution for us to look at as we walk away.
Time has been called. Please prepare your closing statements. I ask that the audience remain silent for 1 minute to aid the competitors in their preparation. Please put down your pencils. And in voluntary order, please stand and give your 1 minute closing statement.
I've really enjoyed our discussion today, and I think that we've gained significant ground towards the solution to this problem. And whether it's through a blog that farmers could create and be a member of, or a panel of lawyers, or even just working together to advocate with our legislators and their staff. I think that if we utilize the reputation that Farm Bureau already has in Congress and on the Hill, that we will make huge strides to solving the problem of rules and regulations. I appreciate the discussion today.
Well, we've chased a lot of rabbit trails and overturned a lot of different problems and a lot of different solutions. Will, I appreciate that the practical experience you brought, not just from being in agriculture, but in a multitude of different businesses and the regulatory burden that you deal with. Heather, I appreciate your idea about legal resources, especially the panel of lawyers. And Caitlin, you focused right off the bat on getting behind legislation that will deal with a lot of these problems immediately as soon as they are passed. I think the best way the Farm Bureau can deal with these problems like we covered is providing the resources for farmers to understand the regulations and also help give them the confidence to mobilize and build personal relationships with their senators, being active on the local level, and even taking office to have direct influence on policy can be the best way to deal with the burdens that we currently face. And I think that we should, like Gerald Long said, we should take the opportunity we have now and not become complacent so that we can actually reform the government to suit our industry and to help make our businesses more efficient. I appreciate the discussion. I hope we implement these ideas.
While some level of regulation will always be necessary for the agriculture industry, I think that we identified today that Farm Bureau can support farmers by advocating for legislation that will reduce these regulations, will simplify these regulations, and will justify the regulations that are in place. In addition to that lobbying aspect of Farm Bureau, we can also provide support for farmers on the local level by providing information about the regulations that are in place and providing resources for farmers who may be in violation of regulations by providing a list of legal resources that they can then contact. I appreciate the discussion. I think that we came up with some excellent solutions for this issue.
I think we've all agreed that something needs to happen. And kind of what I take away from this is ways that Farm Bureau can help lessen the burdens of legal issues and regulations is, first, let's simplify what's already there. Let's make it easy to understand, easy to use, ways that general old plain old farmer Will can understand what's going on. I think that's a good place to start. Other ways is by putting the information out there, we all kind of agree we need a centralized location that you can go to and find out what issues are out there, what issues are affecting, whether we do that through the Georgia Neighbors magazine or the Farm Bureau website. I think that's something we can really work toward doing and seeing a change caused by. Some other things that we could do is be involved, be engaged, have an active voice in our local community so that we have some merit behind what we're saying. Like I said before, we're in a golden age for Georgia agriculture. If we miss this opportunity to capitalize on the work that's been done before us, we really let agriculture down.
Let's show these competitors our appreciation for a job well done.